Hello and welcome to a gut reaction. It's quite late here. I came in from the cinema a couple of hours ago, having seen Kevin Costner's self-funded Horizon: An American Saga Part 1. Now, I'm going to get into it a little bit. This is just a gut reaction, so I try to keep these videos kind of under 20 minutes. That hasn't always worked that way, but it's longer if I have a guest or two, yeah, so we're going to get into this. I'm going to talk about the box office a bit as well, because I want to do what I can to support this film, and I'll tell you why, regardless of opinion. These kind of films don't get made anymore. Kevin Costner is in a very fortuitous position where I'm sure he doesn't have money to burn in terms of 40 million, but I think he, at this point in your life, you sort of look at what projects you want to do left, and if you're a successful filmmaker like Tarantino or Scorsese, and you've got maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 years left in the industry, maybe less. Unless you're Clint Eastwood, of course, who's going to keep going for another 100 years. But you probably look at what projects you want to do. You probably look at, what is going to be your swan song project, what is going to be the thing you go out on. And I'm sure that's what Mr. Costner had in mind when he sort of conceived this epic saga, Horizon, which I believe he started writing it on his last season in Yellowstone. I think he was probably, I don't know this for sure, but I think he was probably inspired by some of Taylor Sheridan's other output, because we've had the excellent 1883. At least I think it's pretty good. It's not a show without its flaws, but it's a very good telling of the brutalities of the first people traveling west, the first settlers, and sort of the first small towns and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure Costner was a fan of it. And I think he probably wanted to do his own spin on that. And of course, Westerns have always been his thing. I mean, even Yellowstone technically is a modern Western, let's be honest. So I think he probably thought, yeah, I kind of want to do my own 1883, but his thing is set earlier than that. So the film opens. Do you know what? I'd need to double check the year, but I think I think it's about 3 years before the American Civil War. But let's just check that for a second. I just want to make sure I'm not getting any facts wrong, because I don't like to get my facts wrong, because then people have a moan. And my memory is atrocious, so even though I literally just saw the film a couple of hours ago, let's just double check on Michael Google here. So Horizon, An American Saga. So it is 3 hours long. It didn't feel like 3 hours. I was constantly interested. It was a bit of a slow beginning. The first 15, 20 minutes was quite slow. But once we got past the first, what I'll call, shall we call it, the first action scene, the first scene with fighting, if you like, I was, from that point onwards, I was constantly interested. I was constantly interested in the characters, very invested in their narratives and so on. So if we go onto the Horizon Wikipedia page, let's just have a quick look at the it's 4 planned westerns. There are 2 that have already been filmed. I feel like he's probably got material for more than that. I'll come back to that in a sec. And the second film, of course, comes out in August. So you're not going to have to wait too long for part 2. Let's just, and there's part 3 and part 4. And where's the bit with the story? I just want to double check the year in which it's set. Or do we not have that on here? For the film? No, okay, that's a more detailed. There's yeah, premieres, all of that. Okay, story, nothing on story, for God's sake. But it's set pre-Civil War. I think it's a couple of years before the Civil War when it starts. It's 15 years across. Okay, I think so. This first film is set across something like 2 to 3 years, give or take. So it's a multiple complex narrative. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers because quite a lot of people won't have seen the film yet. So I'll try and keep this relatively spoiler free for people. And if I'm going to do a spoiler, I'll tell you, but I'm going to keep it relatively spoiler free. It's a multi-character narrative, quite complex. We follow various people who are traveling west for various reasons. There are settlers who are coming there for the first time. There are settlers who are already there. There are Chinese railway workers building the railroads. You have American Indian, native Indians who are gradually being pushed out of their land and trying to decide whether or not to, they're divided over whether or not to attack the white settlers. Now, some people have complained that the depiction of the American Indians in this is too negative. I don't agree with that at all. I think it's pretty accurate, actually, because that you've got to remember that this was a time when the settlers were basically at war with the tribes because they kept imposing themselves on more and more of their land. The Indians had to go further and further away to hunt for their food. They had to go into the hunting grounds of their adjacent neighbors, different tribes, which meant that they were trespassing, breaking previous agreements and traditions, which meant they were having to go to war with other Indian tribes. And that's kind of covered in this. And I think it's good that that is there. So although you start off, I guess, in a traditional sense of seeing Indians doing bad things like we got in the old John Wayne westerns, it's very balanced because we do see settlers and cowboys doing very bad things as the movie goes on. So there's no all good and all bad characters here. Kevin Costner's not the focal point of the story. He's one of many characters who we follow. He doesn't have particularly more screen time than anyone else. There's a sort of love interest between Sienna Miller's character and Sam Worthington's character. Sam Worthington is actually pretty good in this. I found him to be a fairly apart from Avatar, most of the stuff he's done since Avatar, I've sort of been a bit indifferent about, but I actually really quite like his performance in this. He's got a bit more going on, and I think we have to probably give some of the credit for that to Costner because he's in the hands of a director who really knows his stuff. Let's go through the cast, and I'll kind of, in fact, if I go through these pictures, because I'm not going to show you any video. So Costner's kind of like a sort of trader. He's with a mixed group of people who sort of, they're kind of loners, but they're traveling at this point in time together. This is one of many incredible shots in the film, by the way. Then you've got Luke Wilson, who's leading one particular group of wagon train that's hoping to get to a place called Horizon. The reason the movie is called Horizon is because there is a number of plots of land that have been either sold off cheaply or promised for free on this particular place called Horizon. I think people have been buying them for like $500 or something back in New York or a unspecified city. So Horizon is what's drawing all the characters together. That's not a spoiler. It's in the film from the get-go. And yeah, 1883. I've got it on the shelf behind me, the Blu-ray. It's fantastic. Yes, it is worth your time. I've got some criticisms if you want to hang around for those, but overall, I'm going to say I liked it. But I'll talk about it. So so this is one narrative, The Wagon Train, which also has my favorite actor, Will Patton, in that. Let's get past the premiere pictures. We don't need to see all that nonsense. I mean, it's not nonsense, but you know what I mean. Let's get to the show. Where's the show? Where's the show? Come on now. Oh, for God's sake. All right, let's just do this. And you can tell I'm really organised here, can't you? So much canned stuff. Okay, yeah. All right. So I like these posters with the characters on. Oh, German. So Michael Rooker is playing like a sort of grizzled cavalry officer. Don't forget that the American Civil War hasn't started yet. It starts towards the end of the movie, and some characters leave to take part in it. Not many, but some. Tom Paine is on the wagon train. He's like a sort of British upper class, rather self-entitled artist with traveling with, I think, either his girlfriend or his wife, who is equally self-entitled and upper class. And I'm expecting them to probably come to a grisly end. But again, no spoilers. Jamie Campbell Bower, who I loved in this, is part of a family who we're introduced to fairly soon at the beginning, who are hunting a woman because that woman has wronged the family. I'm not going to do any more spoilers beyond that. You'll get all that information that I've just told you in the first 10 minutes. And him and Kevin Costner's character meet in this kind of small sort of mining town. That still is not in chapter 1. That still is from the trailer for the rest of the saga. The last 5 minutes of the film are basically a massive montage for everything to come. So that is one of the scenes that is not in part 1. Isabel Furman is one of the Irish on the wagon train. It's Luke on the wagon train. Now the wagon train isn't the only storyline. So we have a cavalry encampment and a fort that's being built, which is the sort of furthest west settlement in the area that we're in. And Sam Worthington is the second in command of that particular station. And various characters from Horizon end up there. I won't get into why. Takana Means must be the son of Russell Means. That's awesome, because I absolutely loved Russell Means. He's no longer with us, sadly. This must be his son. He's good. He's one of the many Indian characters in the show. There's about half a dozen. And some of them have a very brief introduction, and I can tell they're being set up for bigger plot later. There's Jamie Campbell Bower again. Sienna Miller plays a widow who has a storyline with the cavalry commander, and I'll leave that there. Danny Houston, who's always amazing in anything he's in, he is the cavalry base commander, the fort commander, if you like. And this is the poster that promises riches, pure and abundant water, virgin land, best grazing land in the world, etc., which is why it's drawing people from all over. I'll do my score at the end. Abby Lee is Kevin Costner's love interest, I guess you could say. Her character's quite complicated. I like her as an actress. I thought she was good. Jenna Malone is she's the girl who the family are trying to track down, the family of brothers. Ella Hunt is the self-entitled upper class English girl. Her character is very annoying, which I'm sure was the intention. She's very much like Nicole Kidman's character in the things she did with Tom Cruise, Far and Away. Very similar character. It's Michael Rooker. Owen Crowshoe is the Indian who wants to go to war with everybody. He's a really good actor. Really liked him. All the Indian scenes are done in their native language, though they do speak English occasionally, like they're practicing English. But oh, sorry, the score is in the soundtrack. It's good. It's good. I liked it. It's got a kind of, I don't know if it is Bruce Brufton, I'll check, who did Silverado, but it's got a bit of a Silverado vibe. And there are a few people from Silverado in this, by the way, like Michael Rooker. Not Michael Rooker, sorry, Jeff Fahey is in this. Well, I was surprised to see him. This is all more canned stuff. Okay, here's some on-set stuff. So lots of tented encampments. All the production design, makeup, costumes on this is all absolutely first class amazing. That's all you need to know about that. It's amazing. It's at a level that you would expect for this sort of thing. I think that's we've probably seen all the stills that there are. So let's just hold on that one. Oh, that's Russian, isn't it? There we go. So as you can see, part 2 is coming out August 16th. So these various narratives, we can tell that they're all going to collide in the film, and the film's strength and also the film's weakness is that part 1 is basically the setup. Part 1 of Horizon American Saga is your setup, is your prologue almost of this story. It is setting up all the characters. It's putting all the pieces on the board for you. And it's setting up a lot of conflicts that are to come. And yeah, Jeff Fahey is very much back on form in this film. So it's setting up a lot of conflicts that are come, a lot of storylines to come, some minor characters that are going to be bigger characters. But the problem is that I think the younger generation who just want to sit and watch a movie, go in and out and have a complete story will come out thinking, wow, I'm a bit confused. What's happening now? I know there's a part 2, but I'm all confused. So I think that's probably why it's not taking off at the box office. This is told in a very old school style with old school photography, which, by the way, I love. Those are not criticisms. Dialogue is 90% of it's really good. The dialogue's kind of almost old style English, which I like. There's a couple of scenes that are a little bit awkward. There's a sort of, shall we call it, a making love scene that is a bit borderline rapey, and actually it's a woman doing it to a man, not the other way around. So that scene made me feel massively uncomfortable when I was watching it. I could hear people in the cinema going, it didn't ruin the film or anything, but I was just like, oh, not sure about this scene. The action that is in this one, and I guess there's 3 action sections, is good, quick, brutal, just like it should be in the American West. The characters, for the most part, have got quite a lot of nuance, so it's as it should be. It's hard to define some people as totally good or totally bad. I like that about the mean family. Not the mean family sort of has got some nuance, which I like. They're not cardboard cutout bad guys. So there is a lot of positives for Horizon. I think that the problem with it is that I don't think the under 35s will have the patience for the film. Didn't feel long to me. The opening felt long. The opening felt a bit too long and a bit too slow. But oh, thanks, Bergflicker. I haven't seen you in the chat before. Appreciate you popping on. Do subscribe if you haven't. I'm doing this spoiler free, mate, so you can listen in. The opening is a bit slow, but once the first action scene has occurred, you're pretty invested by then. I think it's slow deliberately so you can get to know some people and you feel attached to certain people. But I did feel like there were a couple of bits in the narrative that really jarred. Like I felt that there was a time jump at one point, but didn't feel like that was clearly stated. So I wasn't sure how much time had passed at one point. But I feel like this section of the movie is set over a year to 2 years, but I'm not sure. And I would have liked some titles that said sort of 2 years later or 6 months later. Now, it might be that I missed that because I had to dash out to the toilet. And not only did I have to dash out to the toilet, the gents' toilet in the cinema was out of order. So, so I went to the disabled one, which was also out of order. So I had to go in the ladies, and there was a load of girls recording a TikTok dancing in front of the mirror. Can you believe it? Apologized to them and said, look, I can't go anywhere else, so sorry, oh, this is the women's. And I said, yeah, I know. I was so tempted to say I'm a trans man, but I didn't. Sorry, that's a terrible joke. My apologies. But So I had to like dash into the loo, dash out because I hate missing anything. I knew I wouldn't make it through the whole film without having a wee, even though I didn't have a drink before I went in. So I probably missed about 30 seconds. So there might have been a title on the screen. Yeah, and I can tell people are laughing. It was very entertaining. There might have been a title on the screen that said 6 months later, or it might have shown another year. There is a year given at the beginning. There's a date, there's a year, and there's lots of locations mentioned, like, so you know where people are coming from or where they're traveling from, stuff like that, which I found helpful. So I like it. I think people should support it. It's definitely going to appeal to the older generation. I think the problem with it is that our generation, anyone sort of 45 and over years of age, grew up on kind of cowboys and Indians. We all had toys. We all had toy cowboys and Indians. You know, I had the Britain's cowboys and Indians and the Tempo ones, which was the cheaper company. And if you were really lucky, you had the Tempo Cavalry Fort. So I've just mentioned to Roman, we might do a stream about cowboy and Indian toys on his channel. But this is a film for that generation because it's made by Kevin Costner. It's made for people who love westerns. I think getting the audience of under the age of 35 to engage and invest in an epic western at the cinema, which is also in its dying death throes. I don't know how many cinemas there's going to be in 10 years' time. I think is going to be really difficult. But I'm glad Kevin Costner has taken this punt. I'm glad he's brought us this movie, and I think this saga actually will very much. I think it will become a metaphor for two things. I think it will become a metaphor for probably the end of movie theaters. I don't think we'll ever see their total end, but I just think as a viable commercial business in the mainstream, they're definitely going to die and shrink off, and we're going to have a much more limited number of cinemas. So we're going to have less films being made specifically for the big screen like this. And I think this film, this saga, is going to represent the death of that kind of movie. I don't think we're going to see someone take a risk on this kind of thing again. And I think this saga will come to represent the end of this. Will be the last grasp of someone really doing something quite spectacular and quite risky. The problem with part one is it basically is a setup film. It's a lot of setup. It's a lot of establishment of character, establishment of narrative. Don't get me wrong, it's engaging, it's good, it's well shot, it's for the most part I was very happy with the acting. In fact, no one was rubbish, so everybody was either average, good, or very good. Kevin Costner's son was good, in case people are wondering. Kevin Costner's son was actually very good, and so he should be. He's got a good teacher, surely. So it's really hard for me to give this a mark because I feel like I've only seen half the story, and I'm guessing that the first two are probably going to round out various storylines and then probably set up new ones for parts 3 and 4, which of course are not completed yet. I suspect that Costner has probably shot, with his principal actors, he's probably shot all the footage he needs to go right through for all 4 movies. What he probably hasn't got for 3 and 4 is the big epic second unit stuff. So my gut reaction to the film is it's good. In fact, for me, I thought it was very good. It has flaws. Those flaws will be perceived as bigger for some people. For me, they're quite small. Like I said, a couple of scenes that maybe didn't work, one in particular, and the fact that it's a setup, it sets up a lot of stuff. There's very few completed narratives in this movie. In fact, there's really only one. that cycles out quite early on. So with the death of a particular character or characters. So this really is kind of part one of a mini series. It's almost like it could have been on Netflix and this is part one. And like Empire Strikes Back, you're going to have to wait a little bit for part two. I will be straight to the cinema on the opening day to see part two. I'm invested in the characters. I want to find out what happens to them. I think part two is going to have quite a lot of action in it, especially if the sort of montage at the end of the film is anything to go by. I was wondering how they were going to end it. And it's funny because it doesn't end with like a particular scene that sort of very much stamps the ending. It ends one scene quite gently. And this is not a spoiler, by the way. It's just an explanation of how we get the trailer. And it sort of bleeds that scene quite organically into the trailer. And then you've seen 3 or 4 quick shots before you realize, oh, hang on, this stuff's not happening now. This is the trailer for the rest of the story, isn't it? So it's not like you get a coming soon or coming next in the American Saga. It quite organically bleeds into the trailer. And the trailer is long and it shows you a lot without spoiling anything. For the most part, I think there's probably a couple of things they could have left out. So that's quite an unusual thing to do. Has anybody else in the chat seen it? Hi, Sandy. Great to see you. This is just a quick review of this. I was also going to review a British miniseries tonight, but I've bumped that to Monday in favour of doing this because I want to support Mr. Costner. Sandy says, as much as I love American history, I just can't get into Westerns. I will someday. Well, I don't think we're going to see another Western like this, not on this scale. If you're going to support one, I think you should go and support this one. That's my personal view. I think everybody should support it, really. And some people don't like Kevin Costner. I get that. I think he's a bit like Marmite with a lot of people. I mean, I think he's a superb actor. I've followed him since Silverado, which is actually my favorite Western. I thought he was amazing in JFK. I kind of feel like his performance in JFK sometimes got a bit overlooked because of the politics of the subject matter and that surrounded the movie. Some of the actors that you're barely going to recognize in this film, you will recognize Will Patton. You probably won't you probably will recognize Michael Rooker. But Will Patton is one of my favorite actors on the planet. I would absolutely love to interview Will Patton. The first thing I saw him in was a Kevin Costner film, which I need to do a chew the fat review of in detail, and that was No Way Out in I want to say that was 87, I think, with Gene Hackman and Kevin Costner. Absolutely amazing film. If you haven't seen it, you must. That was the first time I'd ever seen him in anything. Here he is in that film, where he played a sort of gay intelligence officer of quite a senior rank and one of Kevin Costner's bosses, and a very complex man. And I just absolutely love that film. Will Patton steals that movie. He completely steals that film. And Gene Hackman is incredible in that film. So well, Sandy, I tell you what, when I do a chew the fat on No Way Out, you need to come on for that. You should come on for that. You can be my co-host. Let's get back to the cast of just see if there's anyone else I want to shout out. Because there was one actor who I thought, I can't quite see him because he's covered in a beard, but that sounds like the voice of blah blah. And I just want to see if that is the guy I thought it was, but I don't. Maybe it wasn't because I don't see his name. He played the bad guy in he was either the bad guy in The Crow or the bad guy in Highlander, which is 2 different actors, Clancy Brown and forget the name of the other guy. Luke Wilson's good in this, very different role for him. Elizabeth Dennehy must be Brian Dennehy's daughter, I'm guessing. That's interesting. I wonder if Dalton Baker is Joe Don Baker's son. These are all people that have worked with Costner. James Russo is good in this as well. He's got quite a small role. I don't think we'll... Well, no, we probably will see him again. He kind of runs a store, like a trading post. Angus McFadden. Okay, right. I didn't recognise him. He was in Braveheart, I believe. Is that? Yeah, he was in Braveheart. He played Robert the Bruce in Braveheart. Yeah, okay, so that's... I can't see that actor's name, so it obviously wasn't him. There's your producers, quite a few of them. So the music's done by John Debney. I don't know if I own any of his soundtracks. Let's have a quick look. Oh, he was the composer on The Greatest Showman. Well, there you are. That's an amazing score. He's done the Orville TV series. That's got a great score, the Orville. There's a lot of kind of films and TV bits that I haven't seen. So Texas Rising. I owned the DVD box set for that. That was surprisingly disappointing, that miniseries. It was all right, but I don't know. There you go. He would have worked with Kevin Costner on the Hatfield and McCoys. Previously, he was also the composer on Predators. That was not a bad score. So, I mean, this is a guy with, okay, Sin City. I mean, this is quite a lot. He's been around. Scorpion King. There you go. My friend Sherry Howard was in that movie. Need to get her to come on, actually. Oh, no, I asked her already. She said no, didn't she? Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Let's just see that... So the casting is incredible, but I'm sure basically these casting directors had an easy job, because Kevin called up all of his mates and said, right, I've got a role for you. Michael Winnicott, thank you. Yeah, this guy's voice sounds like a cross between Clancy Brown and Michael Winnicott, but you can't see his face. He's covered in so much beard. And I was thinking, is that one of those guys? Well, I wasn't sure. Yeah, that is quite a diverse thing. Thanks for popping in, Berg Flicker. Really appreciate it. Welcome to the channel. It's quite interactive, this channel, because I can do that while I don't have like thousands of people in the chat. I can have personal chats with people. I like that. So costume, a first class. I'm guessing this lady will have worked with Costner before. She's certainly got a lot of credits. 16, so relatively new. Okay, was that the one that my friend was on, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot? Oh, no, that was a different movie. I've seen that, though. That's a good film. Okay, so he's done, Jack Reacher, Renfield. I think this is the first time him and Costner have worked together, from what I could... Oh, sorry, her. I think it's she, Lisa Lavas, unless they don't like to be referred to as that. But no, I'm just going to assume. So, great stuff. I was looking for production designer Derek Hill. That name rings a bell. I'm sure I've seen him in, art director on Pirates of the Caribbean, The Postman. So there you go. Worked with Costner on The Postman. Did Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan. Ozark. Yeah, so no wonder the production design is shit hot. Art director, I'm guessing, is probably also someone of fairly significant. So let's talk about the box office. So it's had a very weak opening. 800,000 in the States. Now, in the UK, I was quite surprised to see that it wasn't opening on any of like the massive screens. Like, we have these 4 big cinemas in Leicester Square. 2 of them have got screens that are like the size of a city block. And that's the place where you want to see a film like this. I also saw it. It wasn't like 16:9 in the cinema that I saw it in. It was quite sort of, the image was quite that shape, actually. The shape of the still you're looking at right now, the screen was exactly that shape. Didn't mind it so much because it still felt very epic because of the way it was shot. Talking of which, who was the DOP? J. Michael Morrow. Definitely looked him up before. Okay, worked on The Abyss as a cameraman and survived. All 47 episodes of SEAL Team. Longmire, which is very much a Western. Southland, that's a superb television show. So a lot of TV mainly, a couple of movies though. And worked his way up to DOP because he's got a lot of camera and electrical. Look, 73 credits there, 21 as DOP. I love it when people work up the tree like that. That's how it should be. You know, not people coming straight in with the big jobs. Learn your craft, earn those spurs. Then you're going to be extremely technically proficient. And trust me, the photography in this is absolutely gorgeous. It's sumptuous, you know, the lighting's great. So Kevin Costner's Western Gamble Horizon American Saga Chapter 1 got off to a soft start at the box office, bringing in just 800,000 from 3,000 locations. Many in Hollywood are closely watching the box office performance of Costner's ambitious and risky Horizon, the first of planned 4-part series. It's being part funded. Yeah, it's just part funded. He put in 40 million. I don't know what the overall budget is for the whole thing. It says between 50 and 100 here. I'm guessing that part 1 and part 2 were shot back to back, probably for around 100 million, I'm going to guess, because if you're shooting them together, you can be very economical. You can get a lot out of that if you plan it well. Your first AD and second AD do a really good schedule with you, and the production manager, you can really plan it. So there's a load of blurb there. Going into the weekend, they predicted an opening box office take of 10 to 12 million, but it's got a tepid start. Hoping it'll be boosted by Heartland audiences and older moviegoers. I mean, it's definitely a film for an older audience. This is not a film for kids. Kids, I think, will be quite bored. Not because it's not engaging. It's shot like an old movie. It's not got. I suppose I did come out thinking, oh, should Kevin have, you know, done some kind of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves type camera work to sort of make it a bit more modern and whatnot. But do you know what? I think his approach was probably, this is my swan song project. I don't mean to suggest he's going to die soon or anything. I just think this is going to be like his personal epitaph to Westerns in the cinema, the Western narrative. While cinema is dying, while big studio pictures are dying, while the cinema auteurs are small in number, there's not many of them that will back a filmmaker like this. You've got Tarantino, Scorsese, Michael Mann, maybe 5 or 6 others, not many that can pull together something like this. And that's a shame, you know, that's a shame, because we're not everything they're going to make is going to hit the mark, but we're not seeing those. Like, for example, The Irishman. I know Scorsese fought tooth and nail to get that made, and for it to be the length it was, and you can argue that it's too long a movie. I didn't mind, although, you know, I guess we didn't want to see gangsters in care homes, but that was part of the point of the movie. He was saying, look, the ending for them is just the same as everyone else, no matter what kind of life they've had. You know, they all end up in the same way. I kind of liked that. I thought it was a pretty sober, grim lesson. I always said when I rewatch it, I always turn off the last 20 minutes, which is quite funny. So I think the older audiences and the audiences that have enjoyed Westerns are going to love it. It's good that part 2 is dropping the next month, because you could have released these 2 parts together. You could have released part 2 next week, but I think maybe it's good to have a month of word and mouth. I think everyone that will enjoy the film will tell their friends who they think will enjoy it to go and see it. I don't think it's a date movie unless your date happens to be Sandy and she's into Westerns, but Sandy's not into Westerns. She's only into history. So don't take Sandy to see this film. It's not really a date movie. It's not a date movie. It's not a family movie. So it's for the older generation who liked Westerns. So that very much is going to be older males and women who like going to line dancing and fancy Kevin Costner. I don't, by the way, I think this is a very accessible film for a female audience. It's the female characters are represented as they were in at the time. So you haven't got females going around as cowboys with guns and, you know, unlimited skill sets and all that kind of thing. Women do get hit. They are kind of, you know, given the cooking and cleaning to do, but there are gutsy, interesting female characters that are still strong, determined characters. There are independent female characters. There are interesting female characters. So the women in this are not all kind of subservient, bland archetypes of that historical narrative. They are more interesting than that. They're more nuanced. They have more layers and more levels, just like they would have done in real life. So the women are well written, which normally nowadays, if we throw back something, the type of female characters you get in something like Rogue Heroes are just totally unrealistic. You know, they have dialogue and skill sets and stuff that they just never would have had. But the film as an opener does feel like an incomplete experience, because it is. And I think for some people that's going to be a problem. So the other film that's open is the sort of day one of The Quiet Place, isn't it? I don't know why. I don't really, not really bothered about going to watch that. I quite enjoyed the second one. I just don't feel like I need to see a third one set in that storyline. So my rating for this is difficult to give because it's an incomplete story. It's just the first half. Before I wrap up, let's have a quick look at the user reviews on IMDb. Let's see what people are saying. 43 critic. I'm never read the critic reviews, by the way. I'm always in Best Western, another good film, 8 out of 10. Long but worth it. See, apart from the slow beginning, after that, I was constantly engaged. So yeah, the pacing at the beginning is slow. Read before listening to the negative reviews. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. One of the best westerns. 10 out of 10. 6 out of 10. A solid grand take. Still a positive title. 10 out of 10. 7 out of 10. It's part 1 of 4. 2 out of 10. An excellent opening with a middling second act and an abysmal third act. I don't agree about that. But obviously, you know, some people won't like it. Very disappointing. Nothing but character intros. Now, you see, this is what I said. This is what I said people's main criticism will be. This film is 90% setup. And that is going to be the criticism that's going to be aimed at this movie. It's 90% setup. So that's not an unjustified criticism. It is mainly character introduction. That's 90% of the film. That's not a bad thing, because you're going to be very invested in these people for part 2. So because we know part 2 is coming, it's only a criticism for people that want everything now. Really bad, as vain and aimless as The Postman. I do not agree with that, and I'm not a fan of The Postman. I didn't like it at all. I might rewatch it at some point, but yeah, okay. Well, and there's so a lot of 10 out of 10s, a lot of 9 out of 10s. Plough brings the rain. If you build it, they will come. From Silverado to this here Cinema Gold. Kevin Costner has made one of the best films of 2024. I mean, it probably. This and Inside Out 2 are probably the 2 strongest films I've seen this year, including television movies. Too soon to tell if it succeeds. I would also agree with that. It is too soon to tell. Buckle up for a disappointing movie. I mean, like I said, not everyone's going to like it. All right, okay. Hard for me to rate it out of 10 at the minute. Toxic and Blue, what did you guys give it last night? What did you rate it? Did you rate it out of 10? Yeah, that was what killed The Postman. We were expecting a huge battle between 2 armies, and what we got was a really crap fist fight between 2 guys. It was, after all that build up, that was so disappointing. It was so naff. Also the kid going at the end, that was me. Oh God, that's terrible. Sorry, I'm a big fan of Costner, but not that movie. That was the one for me that I liked the storyline. I kind of liked the idea. I kind of like the idea of reviving a fallen society with a postal service. And it's based on a book, which apparently is a lot better. But yeah, it didn't work for me. And Will Patton's the main bad guy in that, and I absolutely love Will Patton as an actor. I love him. I think he's amazing. So I think my rating for this is temporary. I'm probably kind of on the sort of 7 to 8 out of 10 at the minute. I'm not going to give it a 9 or a 10 because it is part one. It's not a film you can really rate until you've seen the rest. I think that's a fair comment. You can't really rate this movie until you've seen part two. I feel like the first two chapters will be a fairly complete narrative, not totally, but I feel like if Costner's clever, what you'll get with parts 1 and 2 is the first half of a bigger story, but it feels like the first chapter, the sort of the, you know, I guess it's going to be maybe the first 7 years or something, but it's probably going to end. Part 2 will probably end with people coming back from the Civil War. That's my prediction. There are two characters, they're fairly minor characters actually, that have gone off to the Civil War. Again, I'm avoiding spoilers here. And they've got attachment, sort of emotional attachment to other characters. And the most moving scene in the film was when they went off to war. Actually, I found that scene quite moving. And you're hoping that those characters are both going to come back. We shall see. I think we'll find out in part 2. I think because if it spans 15 years, the American Civil War lasted for was it 1861 to 65, right? So it's like 4.5 or something like that. So yeah. Yeah, 4 years. Thank you. Of course, I've got Sandy in the chat. So yeah, anything on the American Civil War will be expertly covered. Yeah, so my predictions for the second half are that we will get a lot more action, a lot more conflict, because lots of conflict has been set up. You've got conflict with the wagon train and the Indians because they see more white men incursions into their territory. That was the word I was looking for, incursions. You've got conflict between the people trying to settle in Horizon, which is the new town, and the Indians, and also bad people. You have conflict between Kevin Costner's character and a group of people that are looking for him. I'm not going to spoil why. And you've got conflict within the Indian tribes over differing views as well. And then there's a son character there's a young boy who's got his own narrative, who is played by Costner's son. Very good actor. I mean, God, he's a good-looking kid. I tell you now. He's going to do well. He's going to do well. He's got a whole kind of young Channing Tatum thing going on, and I like what's going on with his narrative. His narrative is quite complicated, and I like that. So I think what we'll see a number of these storylines collide quite violently in part 2. I think in part 2, quite a lot of people will die. Some characters die in part 1. I'm not going to say who or how many, but I think a lot more characters are going to die in part 2. Yeah, so you should go and see it. You should go and support it. You've really got to commit to going to see both parts in your head mentally. So if you come out of the cinema thinking, I'm not sure, I think you have to kind of put that on pause until you have seen part 2. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, I'm thinking, yeah, this is pretty good, but let's see what happens. That's kind of where I'm at with it. So that's me. I am back on Sunday for my special Band of Brothers stream. If you haven't tuned into one of those yet, you should, because my Band of Brothers stream is with one of the crew who worked on the show, The Inside Man. We always have kind of exclusive behind the scenes pictures from the production that people haven't seen, because he's the inside man, so he got quite a few. We have some of the cast of the show coming on as well. I don't know if I'm going to have one for this Sunday. This Sunday stream might start later. It's still scheduled for 8 o'clock, but it might start at 9 because I'm traveling back from somewhere, and if I get delayed, it will happen, but it will just go a bit later. So Band of Brothers episode 8, The Last Patrol, is on Sunday. That's going to be a really interesting stream. I've got a couple of more industry interviews coming up. Just had a fantastic one the other day with Jose Zuniga, who started his career on the movie Alive. He's going to come back and do an Alive special with some of the other cast, so that's going to be amazing. So lots of fab stuff coming up for the channel. Yeah, and you'll see me guesting on other channels from time to time, including Roman of Empire, Cannoli, Stupenzo Licious, Dark Hour, and of course the Critical Drinker, and Retro Nerd Girl, of course. How can I forget Retro Nerd Girl? And Anti-Derivative Jill. I pop up on various people's channels. Always open to invites. Little channels should never be afraid to approach me. If you're a small channel starting out and you want to do a live stream but you don't want to do it on your own, drop me a message, and if I think what we're going to talk about is something I can offer an opinion or a view on, I will probably be quite receptive to the idea, as long as I can fit it in with my schedule and it doesn't clash with any of my regular shows. Likewise, it's a bit of an open door policy. I can't obviously have all the people on all the time, but I try and keep my guest panels to sort of 4 to 5 people maximum, so not everybody's shouting over everybody, but people are always welcome. So again, if you're a YouTuber just starting out, I'm doing a stream on Invaders from Mars and that's your favorite film of all time, get in touch with me and I'll probably get you on. So that's it from me, guys. Thanks very much for tuning in. Do go and support Horizon. I think it's a good start. Can't wait to see part 2. I have a feeling part 2 is going to make this sort of this first section of these movies a pretty amazing film. I certainly hope so. I hope the box office picks up for Mr. Costner. He's an actor that's been around for most of my cinema going life. In fact, the first time I ever went to see a movie with a girl I had a crush on, who became my first girlfriend, that was Silverado in the Odeon Leicester Square, which was the 3rd movie I saw in the West End after Rocky IV and Legend with Tom Cruise. So I kind of have a bit of an attachment to the Costner narrative of his career a little bit. I want this to be a success for him. I don't want it to be a turkey, and I hope it will be a success. It deserves to be, because we are not going to see the likes of this type of film again. Trust me on that. They're just not going to happen. And this film is going to become a metaphor for the dying of not only the West, the last days of the American West, the frontier before it's gone, the horizon before it's gone. It's also going to become a metaphor for, I think, the dying of the auteur movie. It's not whether this is successful or not. I just think we're reaching a time where we're not getting those films anymore. There's not many directors out there who are given that free reign of final cut and so on. And it's a difficult thing for studios to give, but boy, would I like it myself. Anyway, part 2 comes out in August. Support that film. I'll be back on Sunday, sometime between 8 and 9 o'clock to do Band of Brothers part 8. Do join me then. Until then, have a great weekend.